Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons. How are you? What's going on?
I don't know. What's happening with you?
I was just improving. I was just doing a little improvisation, visual improvisation. If you're listening to the podcast, you have no idea what I just did. But it sets the tone, the improv, not the no idea, for a really interesting episode today that not only focuses on improvisational skills, but might give you a lot of hints and ideas on how you might use improvisation to get past plot blocks or plot questions in your own writing, or I have an idea, how do I handle it? These improv skills might help you. And we're going to turn to Alex Simmons because, ladies and gentlemen, we have this interview for you because our intrepid world traveler, tell you what, Aaron Blackjack Day don't have nothing on Alex Simmons. Alex Simmons went with his daughter and her boyfriend to Edinburgh, Scotland, the Fringe Festival, and it turned into 3 episodes of Tell the Damn Story. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have the last of the interviews that Alex brought back from Scotland. And Alex, tell us what we're about to hear.
Oh, this time, because not only do we love storytelling, do we love comedy, do we love meeting new people, do I love traveling, but I also love mysteries. And while I was there in Edinburgh, Scotland, at the Fringe Festival, which is, we talked about, that was 2 episodes back. So if you missed that, go back 2 episodes and check that out. But anyway, while I was at the Fringe Festival, I got to see this improv group called Murder She Didn't Write. And if you're hearing in your head and going, wait a minute, that sounds like, yeah, it sounds like Murder, She Wrote, which is the, was it Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher, an author of mystery books and stories like that, who, of course, kept going places where people kept getting robbed or murdered. They never suspected her.
Yeah.
Right, really. That's him. But anyway, it's an comedy improv based on that theme, but there was also audience involved, right? So the audience would give them like a location, they would give them something else, and then they would pick a crime, a particular crime, and who the victim was going to be. And then they would improv pretty much a 60-minute story. And it's 5 or 6 cast members and different accents and all this kind of stuff. It was really
comedic, dramatic, little of both, or
predominantly comedic. But yeah, there was a little moments of drama. But what was amazing is, again, here you have these actors on this stage working out the story as they're doing it. They're working out what happens next week based off of suggestions or prompts from the audience. So they had no prep time. They didn't have a chance to rehearse anything. This was, boom, you're on, go for it. And it's very much about the collaboration and the community and the creativity that flowed between them while they were doing that, as well as every single show that they did for the 6 weeks they were there. Every single show was new because they got new prompts from each audience every single show. So it was 7 times 6.
Yeah.
Do your math, right? 7 days a week. Right,
like 42,
6 weeks,
42 performances, maybe,
pretty much. And I may be off by a number here too, but just think about that. So I had the opportunity through a series of wonderful, incredible connections to interview 3 of the cast members plus one of the technicians who works on the show. So it's Stephen, Peter, Peta, which is one of the actresses on the show, and also Paul. So it's Stephen and the 3 Ps, and each one shares a bit of their experience developing the shows, what it's like, how do they communicate with each other in the moment, all of that. That's what you're going to hear, how to tell your damn story on the fly. And most importantly, I hope what you will get from this interview is trusting and just diving into the deeps, into the pool, as opposed to judging and holding back. All right. So
I think this is going to be a lot of material that people can use, whatever their creative bent is, to keep them going.
Exactly. So
I'm looking forward to it, Alex.
And then when this is over, because this was recorded while I was there in Edinburgh. And for those of you who are listening to this, hey, no big deal. You're going to be listening to it. You're going to hear Chris and I, then you're going to hear them. Then you're going to hear Chris and I again at the end, because we have something special for you. But for those of you who are going to be watching this on our YouTube channel, you're going to see some interesting images and things like that, because I had to do the interview with my phone, and just so I could only grab the audio because of where we were. So you're going to have some images to look at, and some of them will be of the cast, but that's it. So anyway, stay to the end, because Chris and I are going to come back with a little something special for you. So here we go.
Enjoy.
Okay. I am in Edinburgh. Yes, Edinburgh, Scotland. And I'm having the wonderful opportunity to interview some of the cast and crew members of
Murder She Didn't Write.
I'm sorry. Okay. Folks, just for the fun of it, because they don't get to see your smiling countenance, would you share your names with us here?
I'm Stephen Clements.
I'm Paul Milford.
I'm Peter Baker.
And I'm Peter Maurice.
Ooh.
Two different people.
Two different Peters there. Okay. We'll try and keep them separate. Notice the high timbre of one voice and the lower tones of the other. That's what we'll do here. I know you're all new to my podcast, which I normally do with my friend Chris Ryan, who's in New York, and that's all right, Chris. You're stuck there. I'm not. And so I get to ask you all these wonderful questions. But just to tell you a little bit about Tell the Damn Story, we tend to appeal to, shall we say, aspiring and struggling artists. And we like to focus or share the process. And when I say process, I really hate that word, but it's applicable. How do we do what we do? And in doing what we do, whatever that is, how do you deal with the ups and downs of that? What methodologies have you found work? Where have you stubbed your toes? Those things, because a lot of these folks tend to think that it's just me, I'm just not that, or these ideas don't, or blah, blah, blah. It's nice to let them know, hey, we've all gone through it, or we're still going through it. Here's how we're dealing. Maybe some of this will help. I'm going to ask you some questions about your show, but first off, again, for the audience's sake, what is Murder She Didn't Write?
Murder She Didn't Write is an improvised murder mystery. It's an hour, 70 minutes this run. Sometimes we'll perform it in two 45-minute acts. Recreation of a murder mystery play in the style of Agatha Christie, most closely. 1920s, an era taking place at different locations that are classics from the Christie novels. Manor houses, or at the seafront, or museums, art galleries.
Yes, and often we do find that because we are improvised, we're taking basically our impetus from the audience, suggestions that we get. At the opening of the show, you're greeted by a detective who sets out what's going to happen and takes suggestions for the event or occasion that have gathered our suspects together, and an object, and this object becomes the title of the case. So we've had today, for example, it was the frozen cocktail shaker, or other days.
Oprah Winfrey's cocktail shaker.
Oh yes, I wasn't going to mention Oprah Winfrey because
right.
that was that's an example of a difficult situation, a difficult suggestion we get because we are set in the 1920s. So actually, it is a good thing to bring up because we were like, how do we bring Oprah Winfrey, who's very clearly of the late 20th century and 21st, into it?
You saved the day by having your grandma Winfrey as an opera singer. So
yes,
so she was an opera Winfrey.
Opera Winfrey, yes.
Instead.
Well, actually, let me just, again, for the sake of the audience, give them a little clarity. Improvisation is really creating on the fly. It's really, what do I say, what do I do, how do I perform this or such and such immediately, which requires you to walk the wire without a net. All right.
Not entirely without a net.
The
other players.
Here's the secret, folks.
The other players on the stage are your net.
Yes.
How do you mean that?
Often you can get the feeling when you're engaging in whatever creative practice that you have that, it's all down to me. I have to get this right, or it's going to go horribly wrong. You start to catastrophize. In improvisation, we put a lot of emphasis on like collaboration and teamwork and making each other look good. So if someone is having a moment on stage and they're in full flow and you suddenly see them run out of steam, and they're like, and the look comes on their face, the look of terror. I need something to entertain the audience and I have nothing. You can always rely on whoever you're working with, whoever's on stage with you, to leap in and take it off of you.
So collaboration is key.
Yeah,
Definitely.
100%. And worst comes to the worst, if both of the people, all the people on stage aren't having a great time of it and they've got nowhere for the scene to go, then we rely upon our tech, Paul, who will edit the scene and save us from our own situation that we've gotten ourselves into.
Now you're talking live theater here. Chris and I screw up on a show. I get to edit it in post, right? And the audience never sees or hears X. How do you edit on the fly live?
A lot of the time it's, again, within the format of the show, it's watching the cast, getting the rhythm of the show. Again, what I try and do is learn the rhythms of the cast, learn the rhythms of the performers, and learn the rhythms of, okay, they're getting a laugh, they're getting that, okay, they're playing a game between each other, and knowing, okay, the game's coming to an end, okay, let's cut, let's go to something new, brings me new energy, and change the scene, change the moment.
And how do you do that physically? What are you doing that's allowing them to know, oh, new scene?
So our convention is sort of, we have blackout to change the scene.
Aha.
But equally, we're starting a split screen so we can have two pairs of performers on stage. So we have two simultaneous events going on, and so we can cut between those, and they can then inform each other. And then from that, we then go into start going into group scenes.
So it's a little theater, but it's also a little bit of filmmaking, because again, you're cutting from one scene to the next. You're doing crossfades or dissolves. Interesting.
And probably
Paul did a lovely thing like in the show yesterday where one of the characters was reading from a letter and it was a list of things, and rather than let her just go on, we have this like lovely slow fade which then becomes like part of the comedy. So I think like Paul's job is as important as ours in making the audience laugh.
And also we have one of the probably more cinematic conventions of the show, or televisual conventions, that post-death, obviously once you've had a victim die and the rest of us are trying to work out what's happening or searching the house, you have moments where flashbacks can appear, where you reveal characters' motives, and it's also a chance for the victim who's died to get a little bit more stage time and help really flash out that world.
Wow.
That's
So now, again, a lot of writers, when they're working out a story, short story or a novel or a screenplay, they're thinking beginning, middle, and end. And sometimes they're working with an outline. So they've planned what's going to happen in some sort of sequential order, right? You're working again with suggestions from the audience, if I got that correctly. And folks, actually, let me be truthful here. I even got to throw in a suggestion, so I actually know how this works. You're working with suggestions from the audience for an event or a location, and then what else do you take from the audience?
So we also take an object and something that is special about that object. So it will, in the example of yesterday's show, we had the event that was chosen was a solar eclipse, and the object was, what was the object in yesterday's show?
The solar eclipse.
It was the still hairy haggis.
Oh, it's still hairy haggis. Being in Scotland,
Haggis
it seems,
again.
I know, we're getting a lot of haggis. Obviously, for us, the main thing is you really want to honour the event that's been suggested, and we've had such outlandish ones as a deep sea dive or a moon landing, so really it can take us in very different directions, yet also weave in something so that this object can become vital to the case.
Most directly, I think the event or the occasion tends to inform the characters that you find there. On a deep sea dive, you're probably going to get some kind of nautical types or scientists, or if you want to get slightly uncomfortably topical, billionaires, I suppose, in their submarines.
By the way, folks, if you're hearing a lot of background noises, we are in a secret bar adjacent to a theater space of some sort. You know what? Just enjoy it. It's all part of the ambiance, right? Okay.
So yes, as Stephen was saying, we take the setting as the starting place for creating our characters, and for us actors who are about to go on stage, if we're not the first two on, we're standing there looking and seeing, okay, we've got a high status captain, we've got a lower status aide. What other characters do we need to flesh out that world to ensure that we've got a good range of statuses, of accents, of backgrounds and motives, and also reasons to know each other.
Yes, that's a really important thing I was going to say. We have to have met each other at some point in our lives, otherwise it's really hard to come up with a motive out of nothing if you've never met somebody before. So there's always reasons, like family members or people from school from the past that have come back, or a business partner that is long gone, or so we make sure we do that.
We need every character to have a motive for potentially killing every other person on the stage, so that
Your suspects.
you've got to have suspicion cast equally in all directions.
Yes.
And it's really hard to do that if you've not met someone before.
Yes.
You have to lean on.
I just don't like your looks. Okay.
Yeah.
We literally, I think we've done that a couple of times.
Yeah. Actually, if you came and gave that offer, then we would 100% support. That's your reason to want to kill. So there's nothing, for all of us, there's nothing that can be wrong on stage. And if you really hard accept an offer, then
you flow with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, but yes, and.
Yes, and.
Yeah.
The improv maxim.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, keeping.
My goodness.
Someone else has been murdered.
Yes.
Speaking of ambience.
And yes, and.
Again, in constructing stories, one tends to look for sets or locations, characters, motivations, conflict, right? And then at some point, there's a climax and there's a resolution. Yeah. And when because I also teach screenwriting to students, and I talk to them about, you may want the character just to do this and then do that because the plot says so, but there needs to be some reason that the audience can accept.
Yes.
So that, because I believe that character would do X. When I watched the production that you guys did, what was it, 3 days ago? I suspected that the butler had a thing for the lady of the house.
Oh, 100%.
And it was fine because it made sense when later in the production he admitted. Yeah. But again, you were creating on the fly because I watched you decide, okay, you got one suggestion from the person who wore the Sherlock Holmes hat, right? Yeah. And that's another thing you did with the cards where you suggested, it's almost like a game of Clue.
Yeah,
yes.
So we have the detective's helper, Jerkins, and that person is randomly selected by the audience by our detective of the day throwing Jerkins' hat into the audience, and whoever catches that hat becomes Jerkins. And to start with, the event and the object are given by the audience, random kind of people just shout out, and then Jerkins is given a selection of 3 to choose from. But Jerkins is then handed the cards with the colours of the costumes that we're wearing. So Jerkins then is the person who chooses who the victim is and who the murderer is, without the rest of the audience seeing, and that's the point where we learn who's going to die that day and who's going to be the murderer. So we don't know until that
And then
point.
from that point on begin to build off of that.
And I suppose what you said about picking up the butler having something for the lady of the house, something that it's very hard in our show, we can't really have set things we do, but something that's really important is for everyone to have a want. Something they want.
A goal,
A goal. And so it helps really for... The murder itself is a narrative, but if every other character has a clear narrative direction they're going, it helps audience members to either identify with them or in some cases really dislike them if they're quite a negative character, and then you see their comeuppance at the end. So I think the more well-rounded a show is because every character's got a clear want and need and an arc that they can follow.
I think it's really crucial for the enjoyment of the show as well, because we lean quite heavily into kind of farce sensibilities, sudden vault faces, drops in status, people being revealed to have dirty little secrets or having secret affairs going on. So having stuff that you really want helps you to have those kind of like moments where it all falls down around you and you're devastated in comic fashion.
But it's titillating too. It's juicy for the audience, that sort of thing. They're getting excited. And it's maintaining our interest. It's page turners, it's cliffhangers, it's all of these little reveals that compound and make us want to stay on the ride to see, in this case, somewhat of a hero's journey, but also how something is going to work out. And feel satisfied, which I would say, I've only seen one of your productions, but I've heard from other people who have seen other of your shows. Oh, this was so funny. That was great. I couldn't believe they did such and such. So it's very satisfying what you do. And I subsequently do still believe that it's amazing what you do, because there are creatives who they'll have an idea and they'll crush it immediately. You know, oh no, it's probably stupid, or oh no, that'll never work, or it's probably been done 100 times before. Now, here you are, again, on stage, boom, 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 this stuff's coming. How do you stop yourself from judging an idea?
It's the first thing you learn when you do improvisation training is to get past that little voice, the internal critic in your head that's telling you, bad idea, don't do that. Oh, are you sure you want to say that? Because if you can't get past the voice, you'll have hesitation, you'll be judging your ideas before you say them. That slows you down so much for improvisation on stage.
And also something that I think we've really learned, particularly in this show, one of the theatre's wonderful where we're performing, but the wing space is very small. So if we're standing off stage, we miss certain physical offers. So we don't see, for example, a classic example, it was Olympics, I was playing a dancer and I was stretching my leg out, looking in the mirror whilst doing a monologue and preening, and someone walked in, "What are you doing in my dark room?" Because she was a photographer. And so I said I was Argentinian for some reason, and I said, "Oh yes, I have a terrible illness called room blindness." And so that gave me a gift that then meant that throughout the show I could turn on and ultimately help the detective to discount me as the killer, because I wouldn't have known that was the right room to lure the victim to. There's also something as well that about the beauty of accepting mistakes and running with them.
But as a member of the audience, being satisfied with the ending is not very much down to the detective, but the detective is always very clever in finding the loose ends and tying them all up at the end. Like, even if you think something's been forgotten as an offer somewhere along the line, quite often the detective will weave it back into the denouement at the end, which is just lovely for the audience.
And that's because she's taking notes?
Yeah, so the role of the detective is to come out at the end and provide the solution to the mystery. And we have them sat on the side of the show for the whole time, because as much as we're skilled improvisers, that level of kind of like pulling a murder mystery solution out of thin air is really hard. So we have them on the side taking notes so that they don't miss anything. They've got a little bit of time to work out what the solution is, so they can set it all up and they can come in and they can deliver it with big confidence, and everyone can be amazed.
And sometimes it's that one minor detail that you mention in a first scene and you forget about it, but because the detective has it written down, it helps you to bring that in as the one key point that helps you solve the case.
That reincorporation is so impressive to the audience.
And again, for those of you who are not here and didn't get to see this show yet, the look of the detective in this case is a Jessica Fletcher for the American audience, or an Agatha Christie kind of Miss Marple for the more elite and aware European audiences.
Well,
it was in the show that you saw, but we change around. So you saw Lizzie play the detective that day, and she plays Agatha Christie.
Okay.
And Steve has done a couple recently, and Rachel did it today. So the detectives do around as well.
Because I've seen your poster, so that gave me the impression it was the same detective.
No, we rotate a little bit. The detective role is it's taxing in a different way. If you only ever did the detective, you'd give yourself a bit of a headache, I think, after repeated shows.
Okay. So what kind of detective have you played?
My detective character tends to be a bit more in the classic kind of Sherlock Holmes direction of, authoritarian, maybe upper class accent, slightly condescending occasionally to people who say things that don't quite make sense.
And my detective is probably a little more loose and slightly flirtatious, which is just my general personality. But yes, it's good fun in the great scheme of things.
Okay. And
my detective is non-existent. I haven't yet detected, but maybe I will at some point. I think I'm the newest member of the cast here, aren't I?
Yes.
So this is my second Edinburgh, so I should probably do detecting at some point.
I'm sure we look forward to it. So I want to just back up just a wee bit, because you've been saying a lot of great stuff, but I want to go back to that. As you said, it's the first thing you learn when you study improvisation is how to cancel out or ignore or slap in the face that critical voice. What do you do that helps you do that? Or at least
it's
any
really
suggestions?
hard. It is very hard. It is hard. I think it's so easy when you start. You go on stage, you have a scene, and you come off and you think, that was not a good choice. But because any moment where you're thinking about what you've done, you're missing what your colleagues are doing on stage, and you're therefore not being present and following that narrative. So you do just have to work to cut that voice out and focus on the present and the evolving situation and not criticise.
Which doesn't mean that we never criticise our work. One member of our company is the artistic director of the show, and she gives us notes on performance, steers for the next show. But the crucial thing is separating the two processes. It's so hard to be uninhibited in what you're creating and what you're offering, whilst you are also at the same time judging it and analysing it. If you can just postpone it and say, all right, okay, maybe I'll have an opinion about this later, but right now I need to be here and present in the moment. And then afterwards, we'll have a little chat about it. Although we've even found that if we bring in the judgment too soon after the show, we tend to get very critical and focused on, we could have done this differently. Wouldn't it have been better if this? So to stop everyone from having a great time on stage and then coming off and immediately harshing everyone's buzz, we say we only give positive feedback immediately after the show, and we wait a little bit until it's less raw before we start to really dig down into what we could have done better.
We do a circle of awesome, which I highly recommend, even if you're writing on your own. Give yourself a circle of awesome after something.
I like that term, circle of awesome. I tend to suggest to my students that the job of an idea is to be an idea, period. That's it. Once you get it, jot it down somewhere, leave it alone. You can go back to it later. I have notebooks full of things that I have not ever fleshed out in my writing, but they're there. And every now and then I might go and I go, ooh, I can use this. But it's not a matter of slapping it down then, it's giving it some time. I also equate that to a newborn baby. Oh, look at that, here's a new baby. Oh, it doesn't walk, give it back. That doesn't quite work. You got to give it some time. You got to nurture it and all that.
Nice.
We have this idea in improv training. We say don't try and bring a whole cathedral, just bring one brick. Because you're building together. If you bring a whole cathedral, that's really heavy for you to carry, and you don't leave any room for the people you're working with. You're trying to fill it all in at once, and you're just making it really difficult for yourself.
What do you do in preparation?
Preparation.
Just before the show?
Yeah.
What were you going to say? Sorry, just clarify.
No,
You go, because I was going to talk about not before the show.
Oh, not before the show. Okay, just before the show, we may always make sure there's a moment after our sound check and we're all in our costumes that we're on stage just playing a couple of high energy games with each other so that we're connecting with each other. And also we tend to play games where we can flesh out a character that's given to us and just tell some truths about that character, and that character is just a random one that will never end up in the show, but it just gets your brain thinking in the right direction.
And of course Convergence. Which is a great game to get on board. Sometimes it can be really fast, sometimes longer.
Yeah, it's basically two people saying a word at the same time, any word, and then after that the next two people have to try and link that word, so you're aiming to say exactly the same word in the end.
Wow.
And that's Convergence.
It's like a mind meld.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think most crucially what we do before every show is just before the house opens and the audience starts to come in, we all tell each other that we have each other's back.
Yeah.
Because trust is so important for this kind of work. You don't have any other safety net than each other.
Yeah.
So we all go around and we tell each other we've got your back, we'll make you look good on stage today. That trust is crucial, I think, to feeling safe enough to be able to go out there with nothing predetermined and take a chance in front of an audience of however many people.
It's a full collaboration between all 6 people on stage and myself and Fashion. We're all working together to make this story and make this together.
And in terms of long-term preparation, it's our rehearsals. People often say, how do you rehearse an improv show? And it is basically about getting to know each other and see what delights I know. So I can recognise that moment in Peter Maurice's eye where she's got something, she's got an idea, so I know you're leading, this is your scene, I'm here to support. Or if I can see, she knows when I've got that look saying, help.
Fred and Ginger. Yes, it's a dance. It's a dance.
People, you can pimp each other a little bit in terms of...
We should explain that term.
Yes, we should.
Hey, judgment here. I'm not here to judge.
So, we're talking about in the show.
In improvisation, there's this thing that you sometimes do to each other on stage in a playful way where you offer someone a challenge of something to do. For example, you might be, if Peter's character is a cocktail expert, as you were in today's show, you might say, oh yes, I remember you had that list of 7 famous cocktails that you love to make. Tell me all 7.
Oh yeah, and the detective in the show that I saw, she did that.
Yes.
Several times, as a matter of fact, to different performers.
You give those little nudges and challenges.
It's quite nice to know when we're at our rehearsals together and getting to know each other. Like I know that Peter Baker would be all right if I said, "Oh, you're going to sing a song for us," or because that's quite fun. There are other people that would hate that, so you get to know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, figuring out where each other's boundaries lie and just how far you can push to get them to give you a slightly dirty look on stage, but to still be happy to do it.
Now, how long have you worked together, or at least this troupe in some way, shape, or form?
Ooh, good question.
Yes.
I try. And it's getting louder. We'll speak up.
The company has been doing this show, Murder She Didn't Write, at the Fringe for 10 Fringes, although that's not 10 years because we missed a couple of years due to the pandemic.
The sea that shall not be mentioned.
Yes, quite. But various members of the company have been here differing lengths of time. I was one of the co-founders of the company. I've been here for 11 years, I think, because we founded 2013.
Yes.
Must have been. And then Peter Baker joined after that.
First round of auditions.
Yes, because we needed more people in the company.
You.
Thanks.
Very good.
And it's quite funny because I, up until that point, thought I couldn't improvise. I thought I had an impression of improv as being backslapping, university, intelligent, clever people trying to show off.
Wow.
So I learned everything through, but I love murder mysteries. I used to work for the Agatha Christie estate, so I love them.
Mysteries are my things. That's my thing since childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I sort of joined in 2019 very briefly, covering someone I knew one of the classmates. They knew that I was quite a good technician, but I was also artistically minded and came from a dance background and came through the improvisation so I could see and edit that. And then came back again this year. And then
And the other Peter.
And me, the other Peter, the first Peter. No, Peter the first.
Wow.
When did...
I'll take it. I'll allow it. I'll go for it.
I don't know when I joined now.
You guested with us before you joined.
Yes,
Do you
I
remember?
did. Yes, my first show with you was so we do like a week of shows for Pride in Bristol where we do the gender swap, so all the girls have the boys' costumes on and vice versa, and that's really fun. So I guested in one of those shows, and then I had to do an audition properly with other people.
It's only fair.
It's only fair, but luckily I got in.
Yes.
And I can't remember when that was.
That was 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Now, you're focused on mysteries,
Yes.
right? Do you do any other genre?
We've dabbled
as a company.
That's two dabbles. Do I see a third?
So we've tried a couple of different show formats that we've invented in the past. So we did one that was based around the idea of being like in a writer's room situation, and we were working together on a script or a novel, and was a little bit less focused on one specific genre, and maybe a little bit less focused on that particular kind of classic farce humor style. It wasn't very successful.
I would back you up on that.
We have started dabbling in short form improv after our rehearsals.
Yes.
We tend to rehearse at the Bristol Improv Theatre, and so started doing these more stuff she didn't write, which is just a little short form improv show that people can pay and come and see, and it's just another way to bring in some extra pennies for the rehearsals and
And
stuff.
it's also a way for us to... So the Bristol Improv Theatre is the UK's first improv theatre.
First dedicated improv
First
theatre.
dedicated improv theatre. And it's a nice... We share the bill with other up-and-coming acts, so it's a good way for them to get a chance to play. And Stephen you were very much involved from the get-go.
I was co-founder of the Improv Theatre, yes. We'd have one other show format that we tried as well, which is a fairy tale show. It was fairy tale endings, which was a little bit closer to the format of murder, because we got the audience to choose the ending of a fairy tale for us. And so the spell was lifted and the kingdom was free once more. and then we had to try and make a fairy tale that fit that ending over the course of the show. But like the other projects that we've dabbled in, it's been somewhat left by the wayside because...
So you found your genre.
Yeah.
At least one that works well with what you're doing and is successful for your audiences.
And I think probably the success of the show is why we've not had much time to work on another format, because with sorting a tour, we've got a cruise taking us to New York in January, so we'll do a couple of shows.
If you land in some, send I'll come see.
Oh, fabulous!
Yeah.
Yes. I think we're going to be hopefully doing a couple of shows. Is it UCB? Is that in New York?
If you say so.
I don't know. I'll find out. We'll let you know.
Yeah, really. Yeah, you come in my town, please.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. If nothing else, I'll wave.
It'd be nice to have a friend.
The reason I ask is, again, sometimes when I work with writers and again, some of the people that listen to our show, they're trying to find their voice. They're trying to find a topic or a genre or something, and they're frustrated because they don't have it immediately. Again, those of us who've been out here a while understand that it's a journey. And a part of it is finding what works for you, what speaks to you, what you're comfortable with, where even your skill takes you. So in this case, this mystery genre has worked well for you, although it's not an indication of a limit to your skills. It's something that you've developed that works really well, and you're working with it while exploring other possibilities.
It took us a long time to feel really properly comfortable in the murder mystery genre as well. The show as we perform it now took us 5 years? 5 years to arrive at. We've done versions of the show where there was no detective, which was, I guess, more in the direction of And Then There Were None, as a Christie reference. We've done versions where it was all done in flashback and the detective was interviewing people, like, about the crime, and you never actually saw the crime itself. We've had lots of different variations before we finally arrived on the way that we do it now.
So the baby's all grown up.
The baby is all grown up.
Yes. It's pretty well settled now, I think.
Well, I can keep talking to you for hours, but I know that you all want to go eat and do other fashionably fun things. I just want to give you a chance to, maybe if there's something that you'd like to say to round off or express yourself, or some advice or suggestions that you might like to offer those who are aspiring to follow in your well-developed footsteps.
I would say, first of all, I think it's be bold and be prepared to fail. I think that's something that we embrace in a lot of our warm-up. A classic example is one of the warm-ups we do is t-shirt, what's on your bleep t-shirt, and you point at someone, you describe what's on their t-shirt, and the person has to give the slogan of the t-shirt, and after whatever the person says, we all go yay and then carry on. So it's about celebrating the fact that maybe you've not really thought of something very good, but you're going to celebrate you've thought of something in the first place.
And you did it. Yes.
And I think doing it is.
Yes.
I would also say, do not keep your babies a secret. If you've got something, even whatever state it's in, use the people you trust around you to show that to somebody. Get some feedback, and don't just have it all in your head. And keep it to yourself. Use the people you trust around you to help you hone and grow.
Excellent. You don't know how on point that one is for some of my students.
I think what I would say is don't be afraid of your audience. It's really easy to take that voice in your head that's really critical and think that's what people are saying about you. It's just not true. That's something that you're saying about yourself. You don't know what anyone else thinks about your work, your show, until you ask them. You can't just project your own insecurities and fears outwards, because you're just going to give yourself a horrible time.
Let me just make sure that incoming phone call didn't knock out the... No, it's still going, and I can edit that out later. Right. So, I'm sorry, just round off what you said, that last part.
Don't project your own insecurities or fears, the little voice in your head that's telling you you're not good enough, that wasn't funny enough, that doesn't make any sense, outwards, and let yourself imagine that's what other people think about your work. You don't know what other people think about your work until you ask them.
That's another good one, because again, a lot of times writers, aspiring writers, will assume that what's going on in their head is what the audience is thinking, and subsequently won't share their baby, won't put that foot forward.
It's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is scary, and I think acknowledging the fact that we recognize, no, it's not a not scary thing. It is scary. Yeah. You're exposing your thoughts. You're opening yourself to critiques or criticism. You should be careful who you take those things from. But most assuredly, you've got to, if you're going to do it, you've got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to share anything?
I think I would just reiterate what Peter said, and sort of be aware that there is a support system out there with friends and people who have expertise in areas that maybe you don't, and sort of use that expertise. The reason I'm here is because I'm an expert in tech, and use that to frame what you're trying to do, and use that to inform your practice.
And I think also what you guys, I'm sorry, did I cut you off? No. I didn't mean to. I think also what you represent here and what you've talked about is finding your team. Yes. Finding that supportive team or group or friend or coworker who you can trust, who does have your back, and will be honest and real with you.
That's the most important. When we were auditioning, which is how Peter joined the company.
Doesn't it sound like a firm of solicitors? Peter and Peter. We're Marley and Marley.
when we're auditioning for people to join the company, it isn't just about how good a performer they are. It's also about whether or not they're a good fit for the rest of the company in terms of like temperament, disposition. Creative sensibilities.
Look at that.
It's not just about being a great performer. You've also got to be a good fit. You could be the best improviser in the world, but if you're just not very fun to work with, that's no good. No. You can't trust you that way.
Bigged up there.
We have. I love it.
Oh, I thought I was being secretly a little bit backhanded. You got in auditions, but it might not have been because you were great.
You're rubbish at improv, but you're quite fun.
Yeah, you're really lovely.
I really love that shirt you were wearing that day, and I thought, it'll make us look good. Right, exactly. I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I know it's been a little crazy, and again, I know you're tired and want to go eat and drink and be merry, or Peter. So next, thank you once again. And what is your website?
Our website is www.degreesofera.com, which is the name of our company,
Degrees of Era. Oh, yes. Interesting.
And there's an interesting reason. We'll go to one of the founders of Degrees of Era for why it's called Degrees.
The company is named Degrees of Era because we formed the company just after most of us had left university. All of us had gotten degrees in various different subjects, and none of us were seeking employment in the field that the degree would imply. I have a maths degree. I work in the theatre. Lizzie has a science communication degree. She works in television. My colleague Andy had a master's in business administration, and now he's a handyman. Okay. So we all felt like we'd gotten these degrees in error, and hence Degrees of Error.
I like it.
I didn't know that.
Well, see?
I've learned something today.
There you go. Thank you. And so has my audience. Thank you very much for being here, guys.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a delight. My pleasure. Chris, sorry you weren't here. You would have loved it, but you'll hear it. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Damn, Alex. What the hell? Improv, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview. That was pretty cool, Alex.
Yep. I really enjoyed that. And again, it's funny because I'd gone to see the show on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, a buddy of mine who lives in London, he contacted me to let me know that he couldn't come over to Edinburgh to join me there. So he said, you should go see this show called Murder She Didn't Write because I got a friend in it. And I went, I just saw that the night before. He says, okay, so great. Let me let him know that I know you and blah, 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 blah. And that sort of helped bring about this interview. So sometimes the 6 degrees of separation isn't really that much distance involved.
So do we have anything for the people
we do. We have a couple,
to see our beautiful faces?
We have a couple of things. One in particular is I'm going to do a follow-up interview with 2 of the actors because we're going to do something about what it's really like to collaborate and trust when you're working with creatives. And that interview is going to come up probably because right now this is September we're talking here. Probably that's going to come up towards the end of October because in January, the troupe is coming to New York.
Fantastic.
And they're going to be doing a show here in New York, and I hope very much to connect with them and do some follow-up interviews and all that. So you've got
we can go
another interview coming up where they're going to talk about what it's really and how, techniques of not only techniques of improv, but also what is it like to collaborate and trust in collaborations. How does that work? And that works obviously because Chris and I have collaborated, and we have a trust and respect for. He paid enough for it. No, we have a trust and respect for each other.
20 years till he can trust me.
Chris goes for something, I go for something. We talk it through. We love it. If we're having a problem with it, we can discuss it. There's a certain amount of willingness to explore together, and how to do that is its own particular skill that you have to develop. Yep. So that's one. Chris, you also mentioned a person who's a really great teacher of improv. He was a master of improv.
Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, go and Google or just type this into YouTube or whatever. The guy's name is Del Close, and he was the godfather of improv instruction up in Chicago, I believe it was. But he wound up teaching Second City members there improv. Yeah. It wound up being John Candy, the dad from Schitt's Creek, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Belushi was there. A ton of that era, maybe first two, definitely all the people from Second City TV. And if you haven't seen that, go look that up. But also the first two, maybe three generations or iterations of the Saturday Night Not Ready for Primetime players that were on Saturday Night Live. And it changed comedy and comedic movies and comedic television shows, etc. Once they started using what Del Close was teaching them. But he did have a book out. It might be something you'd have to get used or whatever.
I think I can provide a link to at least one of them, which is called Truth in Comedy. Something about the study of improvisation, but there's a link I'll put in the.
But Del Close was the guy who influenced and actually brought forth the comedic talents of so many of those legends. Worth finding and try and turn yourself onto some of his ideas or the ideas that he put forth from the improvisational tradition. Even if you're not an improvisational actor, if you're a writer alone in a room, I improv scenes all the time to figure out how I want to write a story. I also improv comedy for my wife on a fairly daily basis, and that might be the only reason why I'm still in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So it could save
free
your
entertainment.
Marriage.
No, improv is definitely a way of.
There's a little tidbit for you.
Yeah, improv is definitely a way of loosening yourself up, getting your flow going, getting your imagination going at a much better speed, because you're learning to not judge your ideas immediately. You're learning to just try things, just throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's really useful. We get in our way when we keep judging our ideas or thinking that every word has to be perfect before we say it or before we put it on a page. That's not necessarily how creativity works. So Del Close, by the way, that's D-E-L Close, D-E-E-double-L. It's D-E-L Close. The book is called Truth in Comedy, the Study of Improvisation. Like I said, I'll put a link in there. Also look for, in October, a follow-up interview with at least two of the actors from Murder, She Didn't Write. And that's it for now. Chris?
Boom. Yes, that's wonderful. Yes. That has been our trilogy, our Fringe Festival trilogy. There you go. You got
these guys are going to be doing improv together. You saw their last right?
They're improving romantic comedy, those two. But I hope you enjoyed all of the wealth of information and inspiration that Alex brought home from the Fringe Festival from Edinburgh, Scotland. Maybe you're inspired to go there next year. That would be cool too. Let us know what you take away from these 3 episodes. That would be great. Upcoming, we have some returning guests that are doing amazing things, and I can't wait to interview them with Alex and to share the latest chapter of their stories. It's going to be fun. So those things are coming.
Writers, chapter, books. I like that.
I know how to tell a damn story thereby. Yes, I do. I apologize to all of Scotland for that terrible interview. That terrible accent. There you go. Brogue thereby. You mean a brogue.
Take care, Chris.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.